My wife is never going to believe some crazy old woman. That was the last sentence my son-in-law uttered before he understood he had underestimated the wrong woman. That morning began like any other, with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee in my kitchen and the soft light trickling through the window. I didn't know that in just a few hours, my life and my daughter's life would change forever. I didn't know I would see the true face of a man I had welcomed as a son, and I didn't know that a simple key in my hands would become the most powerful weapon I had ever held. My name is Susan Miller. I'm 59 years old, and this story began the day I decided to arrive early at my daughter's house to set up a surprise party, a party that never happened. Because sometimes life has a very cruel way of showing you the truth right when you least expect it. Emily, my daughter, had been married to Ethan for 5 years. 5 years in which I had tried to see in him the good man, the hard-working husband, the respectful son-in-law. 5 years in which I ignored the small signs that now, looking back, shine like warnings I never wanted to read. Because a mother always wants to believe her daughter chose well. She always wants to believe the man sleeping beside her is worthy of her trust. But that morning, everything changed. It was a sunny day. I remember I got up early as always. I made my coffee, sat by the window, and watched as the neighborhood slowly came to life. Birds were singing in the ash tree in the yard. The lady across the street was watering her geraniums. Everything was normal, everything was peaceful, and I, foolishly, thought it would stay that way. Emily had asked for my help organizing a special dinner. It was Ethan's birthday, and she wanted to surprise him with something intimate, something for the family. She had given me a copy of her house key months ago for emergencies. "Mom, you never know when you might need to get in," she had told me with that smile she inherited from her father. That key hung on my keychain with the others, and I had no idea it would soon become proof that God has a way of setting things right, always, in ways we can never imagine. That morning, I grabbed my purse, checked that I had everything I needed for decorating: balloons, streamers, some pretty candles I'd bought at the craft market. Emily would arrive later with the cake. I would get everything ready so that when she got there, all she had to do was enjoy herself. That's what mothers do, right? We anticipate, we sacrifice, we care for, and sometimes, without meaning to, we also uncover. I arrived at Emily's house around 10 in the morning. The sun was already high, and the street was quiet. I parked my car in front of the driveway and took the bags out of the back seat. The house was small but cozy, with a front garden that Emily meticulously cared for. Climbing roses wound their way up the fence, and terracotta pots rested by the door. Everything looked in order. Everything looked perfect. I took out the key and opened the door slowly, trying not to make a sound. I didn't want to ruin the surprise in case Ethan was inside. But when I entered, the house was silent. A strange, dense silence, as if something were holding its breath. I left the bags on the living room table and looked around. Everything was clean, tidy. The wedding photo of Emily and Ethan hung on the wall, smiling, innocent, as if the future were a promise fulfilled. I felt a pang in my chest. I didn't know why, but something about that silence made me uneasy. Then I heard it. A low, muffled laugh. It was coming from the back of the house. I froze. My heart began to beat faster. I thought maybe it was the television, or maybe Ethan was on the phone. I walked slowly toward the hallway, following the sound. My steps were soft on the wooden floor, and then, in front of the bathroom door, I stopped. The door was closed, but from inside came voices. 2 voices, one male, one female, and neither of them was my daughter's. My hand was trembling when I touched the door. I knocked softly, almost unintentionally, and immediately, silence fell on the other side. A guilty silence. A silence that screams louder than any confession. "Who is it?" asked Ethan's voice, tense, nervous. "It's me, Susan," I replied, and my voice came out firmer than I expected. There was a muffled murmur, quick footsteps, the sound of rustling clothes, and then, after what felt like an eternity, the door opened. And there he was, my son-in-law, with his shirt buttoned wrong, his hair disheveled, and an expression that was trying to be innocent but betrayed every ounce of guilt in the world. And behind him, sitting on the edge of the bathtub, was her. Diane, Ethan's cousin, the woman who had been at our table so many times, the one who had hugged Emily at her wedding, the one who had toasted to their happiness with a glass held high and a perfect smile. And now there she was, adjusting her dress, her red lips still glossy, her eyes avoiding mine. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The truth was right there, hanging in the air like a weight none of the three of us could bear. Ethan was the first to speak, and what he said was proof that he had forgotten who he was dealing with. He approached me, looked me straight in the eye, and with a cynical smile I will never forget, said, "Look, Susan, I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. And anyway," he paused, his smile growing crueler, "my wife is never going to believe some crazy old woman." The world stopped. Those words fell on me like stones, not because they hurt me, but because they showed me in a single second who this man really was. He wasn't the kind son-in-law, not the devoted husband. He was a predator who thought he could manipulate, deceive, destroy, and who believed that I, because I was older, because I was a woman, because I was a mother, was invisible, harmless, insignificant. Diane looked down, saying nothing, because cowards never speak when they're discovered. And I, Susan Miller, 59 years old, mother, woman, witness to this betrayal, did something they never expected. I stepped out of the bathroom, closed the door slowly, and with the key hanging from my keychain, the same key my daughter had given me in trust, I turned the lock. I locked them in. I heard the immediate banging, Ethan's voice, now stripped of its smile, shouting my name, Diane's voice begging me to open up. But I was no longer listening. I walked to the living room, took out my phone, and dialed 2 numbers. The first, my daughter's. The second, Robert's, Diane's husband. And as I waited for them to answer, I sat on the sofa, folded my hands in my lap, and took a deep breath, because I knew what was coming next wouldn't be easy. But I also knew the time had come for the truth to come out, and that a crazy old woman could be far more dangerous than any traitor could ever imagine. To understand why what I did that morning was so important, I need to go back in time a bit. I need you to know my daughter. I need you to understand who Emily was before Ethan came into her life, because mothers remember. We remember every laugh, every dream, every promise our daughters made when the world was still a safe place. Emily was born on a rainy afternoon. I was 26 and had just moved with my husband into a small house in the suburbs. I remember it rained so hard that night the streets flooded, and my husband had to carry me in his arms to the car to get me to the hospital. Emily came into the world crying loudly, with her fists clenched, as if she already knew that life gives nothing away for free. And from that moment on, she was my reason for being. I raised her alone after my husband died in a car accident when she was just 8 years old. It was a blow neither of us recovered from easily. But we learned to hold each other up. We learned that pain doesn't kill you if you have someone to hug, and we became everything to each other. Mother and daughter, friends, partners in crime. Emily grew up to be a curious, intelligent girl, full of questions. She always wanted to know why things were the way they were. Why was the sky so big? Why did flowers wilt? Why was her dad gone? And I answered her as best I could, even though I often didn't have the answers myself, because that's also what being a mother is. Pretending you know when you're really learning right alongside them. When Emily turned 18, she went to college to study business. She was disciplined, responsible, a dreamer. She wanted to have her own business one day. She wanted to prove to the world that a woman could stand on her own 2 feet without depending on anyone. And I was so proud of her, so proud that sometimes my heart ached with so much love. It was at the university where she met Ethan. He was studying engineering. He was tall, with an easy smile, and that confidence men who know how to talk often have. Emily introduced him to me one Sunday afternoon. They arrived at the house together, holding hands, and she had that light in her eyes that only a woman in love has. A light that made me feel happy and sad at the same time. Happy because my daughter had found someone. Sad because I knew she wouldn't be just mine anymore. "Mom, this is Ethan," she said, her voice trembling a little with emotion. Ethan extended his hand. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct. He told me he was delighted to meet me, that he'd heard so much about me, that Emily never stopped talking about her mom, and I foolishly believed every word. The first few years were good, or at least they seemed to be. Ethan visited our house frequently. We shared Sunday meals. He helped with the grocery bags, fixed things that broke around the house, asked me how my week had been. And little by little, I began to see him as part of the family, like the son I never had. Emily and Ethan got married when she was 26. It was a simple wedding in the garden of a small country inn we rented in the countryside. Emily wore a white dress we had chosen together, with lace sleeves and a long train that trailed on the grass. She was beautiful, radiant, and when Ethan took her hand at the altar and promised to love and respect her all the days of his life, I saw tears in my daughter's eyes. And I also saw my own reflected in the mirror when I got ready that morning. Because a mother never gives her daughter away without something inside her breaking, even if she's happy for her, even if she trusts the man who receives her. There's always a piece of you that stays in the past, with that little girl who ran barefoot through the house, with that teenager who asked for your advice on everything, with that young woman who now looks at you from the altar as if to say, "Mom, I'm scared too, but I'm going to try." After the wedding, Emily and Ethan moved into that little house with the garden of climbing roses. I visited them often. I'd bring food, help them clean, stay for coffee with Emily while Ethan was at work, and my daughter would tell me about her plans. She wanted to open a clothing boutique. She wanted to travel. She wanted to have children someday. "Do you think I'll be a good mom, Mom?" she asked me once while we were sitting in her little kitchen. "You'll be the best," I replied, and I meant it with all my heart. But over time, I started to notice things. Small things. Details that at first seemed insignificant, but that together formed a pattern I didn't like. Ethan would come home late, always with an excuse. A work meeting, traffic, a difficult client. Emily would justify it. "He's working hard for us, Mom," she'd say, and I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe my daughter had chosen well. But there was something in the way Ethan looked at her when she wasn't watching. Something cold, distant, as if he was there, but not really, as if his mind was somewhere else, with someone else. And then there was Diane. Diane was Ethan's cousin. They had grown up together, he told me once. They were very close. She would come to visit from time to time, always dressed up, always perfumed, always with that smile that seemed to say more than her words expressed. Emily welcomed her warmly. "She's like my sister-in-law," she'd say. And I would watch how Diane sat a little too close to Ethan, how she touched his arm when she spoke, how he laughed at her jokes with a familiarity that made me uncomfortable. But I never said anything. Because I had no proof, because I didn't want to be that meddling mother-in-law, because I thought maybe it was just my imagination. And now, 5 years later, sitting on that sofa with the phone in my hand, I realized it hadn't been my imagination. That all those signs, all those uncomfortable feelings, all those strange silences had been real. And that I should have spoken up. Emily answered on the third ring. "Mom." Her voice sounded cheerful, carefree. "Are you at the house already? How's everything going?" I took a deep breath, and in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "Honey, I need you to come over now. It's urgent." There was a silence on the other end, and then her voice changed. It became tense, worried. "What happened, Mom? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but I need you to come now." "I'm on my way," she said and hung up. Then I dialed the second number, Robert's number, Diane's husband. Robert was a quiet, hard-working man, the kind who goes unnoticed but holds everything up with his silent hands. I had met him at family gatherings, always polite, always attentive, always by Diane's side, even though she barely glanced at him. And now, as I waited for him to answer, I wondered if he had noticed the signs too, if he had also had that feeling that something wasn't right. He answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Robert, it's Susan, Emily's mom." "Oh, Susan, how are you?" His voice sounded surprised but friendly. "I need you to come to Emily's house now. It's important." There was a pause, and then his voice turned serious. "Did something happen?" "Yes. Something you need to see with your own eyes." He didn't ask any more questions. He just said, "I'm on my way," and hung up. I put the phone down on the table. From the back of the house, I could still hear the banging on the bathroom door. Ethan's voice, now desperate, shouting for me to let him out. Diane's voice crying, pleading. But I didn't move. I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, looking at Emily's wedding photo hanging on the wall. That photo where my daughter smiled as if the world were a fair place, as if promises were kept, as if love were enough. And I thought of all the times I had kept quiet, of all the times I had swallowed my doubts because I didn't want to be a burden, because I didn't want to ruin my daughter's happiness. But now I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to be silent anymore. Sometimes we trust the wrong people too much. Have you ever been let down by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to hear from you. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat on that sofa listening to the increasingly desperate bangs coming from the bathroom. Ethan yelled. Diane cried, but their voices sounded distant, as if they were coming from another world. A world where consequences didn't exist yet. A world where they thought they could escape. But that world was about to collapse. I looked at the clock on the wall. The hands moved slowly, as if time itself knew it was witnessing something important. 10:30 a.m. Emily would be here any minute, Robert too. And when they arrived, everything would change, not just for them, but for all of us. I got up from the sofa and walked to the window. From there I could see the street. The sun shone on the pavement. A stray dog crossed from one sidewalk to the other. Life went on, oblivious to the drama about to explode within these four walls. And I thought about how many times I had been in this very house, sharing meals, laughs, celebrations. How many times I had believed that everything was fine. But fractures aren't always visible. Sometimes they start as tiny cracks, so fine you don't even notice them. And only when the entire building collapses do you understand that the foundations have been breaking for years. The first fracture, now that I think about it, happened almost 2 years ago. It was at a family dinner. Emily and Ethan had invited several relatives over to celebrate their wedding anniversary. I arrived early to help Emily with the food. We were in the kitchen preparing her famous pot roast when the doorbell rang. "That must be Diane and Robert," Emily said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Go open the door, Mom. I'll finish up here." I went to the door and opened it. There they were. Diane, as always, impeccable. She was wearing a fitted wine-colored dress, high heels, her hair up in an elegant bun. Robert was by her side, dressed in a white shirt and dark pants, carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. "Susan, so good to see you," Diane said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. Her perfume was strong, sweet, almost overwhelming. Come in," I said, stepping aside. Robert smiled at me with that quiet kindness that characterized him and handed me the flowers. "For Emily," he said. "I hope she likes them." "She'll love them," I replied, taking them. "Thank you, Robert." Diane walked into the house as if she owned it. She went straight to the living room where Ethan was arranging some chairs. And what I saw next was what I should have questioned at that moment, but I didn't. Because sometimes when you don't want to see something, you convince yourself it's not there. Diane walked up to Ethan and hugged him. It wasn't a normal hug. It wasn't the typical greeting between cousins. It was long, too long. And when they separated, I saw how her hand lingered on his chest for a second longer than necessary. I saw how he smiled at her, a smile that wasn't familial, it was intimate. Robert said nothing. He just stood at the entrance to the living room, holding the bottle of wine with an expression I couldn't read at the time. But now, looking back, I think it was resignation. As if he already knew. As if he had seen that scene so many times it didn't even hurt anymore. That night we all had dinner together. There were laughs, toasts, stories. Emily was happy. Ethan was the center of attention, telling jokes, pouring wine, being the perfect host. And Diane was always near him. Too near. She passed him the dishes, filled his glass, laughed at everything he said with a high-pitched laugh that drilled into my ears. I watched from my seat at the table, and every time I looked at Robert, I saw him doing the same thing, watching, silent, with that quiet sadness of men who have learned not to say anything because they know no one will listen. After dinner, while Emily and I were clearing the plates in the kitchen, she said to me, "Diane is so nice, isn't she, Mom? I love that Ethan has such close family." I just nodded. I didn't say what I was thinking. I didn't say that something about the way Diane looked at Ethan unsettled me. I didn't say I found it strange that a married cousin would act that way with her married cousin. I said nothing because I didn't want to be that mother-in-law who sees problems where there are none, because I didn't want to worry my daughter, because I thought maybe it was just my imagination. But it wasn't. The second fracture came a few months later. Emily called me one afternoon, crying. Her voice sounded broken, desperate. My heart immediately started racing. "Mom, can you come over?" she said between sobs. "What happened, honey? Are you okay? Just come, please." I dropped everything I was doing and drove to her house as fast as I could. When I arrived, I found her sitting on the living room sofa with red, swollen eyes, clutching a pillow to her chest. I sat beside her and hugged her. "What happened, my love?" She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Ethan and I had a horrible fight." "Why?" She hesitated, as if she didn't know how to say it. "Because I found messages on his phone." My heart stopped. "What kind of messages?" "With Diane." My blood ran cold. "What did they say?" "Nothing. Nothing explicit. But they were overly affectionate messages, too close. He was saying things like, 'I miss you and when can we see each other?' When I asked him about it, he got angry. He told me I was overreacting, that Diane is his cousin, that they've always been very close, that I have no right to be jealous of his family." I clenched my fists. "And what did you say to him?" "I told him I didn't think it was normal, that cousins don't talk like that it made me uncomfortable." And he raised his voice at me. He told me I was insecure, that I was making up problems, that if I kept this up, I would ruin our marriage. Rage rose in my throat like fire, but I held it back because my daughter needed support, not more conflict. "Emily, listen to me carefully. You are not making anything up. If something makes you uncomfortable, you have every right to say so. And a husband who loves you would not make you feel bad for expressing your feelings." She looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, those eyes I had known since she was a little girl. "But Mom, what if he's right? What if I'm just being paranoid?" "You're not paranoid, honey. You're a woman who is noticing things that aren't right. And that's not weakness, it's intuition." But Emily didn't listen to me, or maybe she didn't want to. Because a few hours later, Ethan came home with a bouquet of roses, apologized, told her he loved her, that he would never speak to her like that again, that she was the most important thing in his life. And my daughter, like so many women, forgave him. Because love sometimes blinds us, makes us believe that apologies erase wounds, makes us think that a rose can cover up a lie. And the fractures keep growing in silence, in the dark, until one day everything collapses. The sound of a car parking in front of the house pulled me out of my memories. I looked out the window and saw Emily's car. My daughter got out quickly, her face full of concern. She walked towards the door, and before she could ring the bell, I had already opened it. "Mom, what happened?" she said, entering the house. I took her hands. They were cold, trembling. "Sit down, honey." "I don't want to sit down. Tell me what happened." I took a deep breath, and before I could answer, we heard another car. Robert had just arrived. He got out of his car with quick, serious steps. When he entered the house, he looked me straight in the eye. "Where is my wife?" I didn't have to answer because at that moment, from the back of the house, a shout was heard. "Robert, get us out of here, please." It was Diane's voice. Emily looked at me with wide eyes, confused, scared. "Mom, what's going on?" And I, in the firmest voice I had ever used, told her, "What I should have told you a long time ago, honey. The truth." Emily looked at me as if she didn't recognize me, as if the words I had just said were in a strange language her brain refused to translate. Robert, on the other hand, had already understood. I saw it in the way he clenched his jaw, in the way his hands balled into fists at his sides. "What truth, Mom?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. But before I could answer, the screams from the bathroom intensified. Ethan was banging on the door with force. Diane was crying, pleading. And Robert started walking down the hallway with firm, determined steps. "Robert, wait!" I said, stepping in his way. I need you to see this calmly. He stopped, looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that surprised me. It wasn't surprise, it wasn't confusion. It was confirmation. As if what he was about to discover was something he already knew, something he had been denying for a long time. How long has this been going on? He asked me. And his voice sounded tired, defeated. I don't know, I answered honestly. But I found them together in the bathroom today, locked in. Emily let out a choked sound, a moan that came from the depths of her chest. She brought her hands to her mouth and took a step back, as if my words were a physical blow. No, she whispered. No, Mom, there has to be an explanation. Ethan. He wouldn't do that. Not to me. And there it was, the denial. That automatic reaction we women have when someone shows us a truth we don't want to accept. Because accepting it means that everything we believed, everything we trusted, everything we fought for was a lie, and that hurts more than any betrayal. Honey, I saw them, I said, approaching her. I saw them with my own eyes. But her eyes filled with tears. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe. Maybe Diane had a problem and Ethan was helping her. Maybe. Emily. Robert's voice cut through her words like a knife. Don't look for excuses. I've seen things too, for a long time. And I always found ways to justify them. But deep down, I always knew. My daughter looked at him, her face bathed in tears. What things? She asked, though I think she didn't want to know the answer. Robert took a deep breath, and for the first time I saw him vulnerable, broken. The messages, the late-night calls, the times Diane came home late smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. The excuses, always the excuses. He paused. And the times she mentioned Ethan's name. Too many times, with too much familiarity. Emily shook her head, as if she could erase reality with that gesture. No, this can't be happening. But it was happening, and the screams from the bathroom were the proof. Susan, open this door, Ethan yelled, and there was no trace of the cynical smile he had shown me earlier. Now there was only panic, fear. Robert walked towards the hallway. Emily and I followed him, and when we reached the bathroom door, the three of us stopped, as if crossing that threshold was crossing a point of no return. Open it, Robert said, looking at me. I took the key from my pocket. My hands were no longer shaking. They were steady because I knew what I was doing was right. That keeping them locked in for those few minutes had been necessary, because sometimes the truth needs time to arrive. It needs witnesses. It needs the right people to be present so it can't be denied, twisted, manipulated. I turned the key in the lock and opened the door. The first thing I saw was Diane. She was sitting on the edge of the tub with a devastated face, her makeup streaked with tears, her hair a mess. She was no longer the impeccable woman who had entered this house so many times with that perfect smile. Now she was just a woman trapped in her own lie. And then there was Ethan, standing with his shirt still buttoned wrong, his hair disheveled. And when he saw Emily standing in the doorway, something in his expression changed. He tried to compose himself, tried to find the words, but there were no words that could fix this. Emily, my love, he said, taking a step toward her. This isn't what it looks like. My daughter stepped back as if his proximity burned her. Don't come near me, she said, and her voice sounded hollow, dead. Love, please let me explain. Explain what? Emily screamed, and it was the first time I heard her scream like that, with that rage mixed with pain that is only born from betrayal. Explain why you were locked in the bathroom with her. Explain why your clothes are like this. Explain why my mother had to lock you in so you wouldn't escape. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, searching for an answer that didn't exist. We were just talking. Don't treat me like an idiot, Emily interrupted him. Don't insult me any more than you already have. Diane, from the tub, began to cry harder. Robert walked into the bathroom and stood in front of her. He said nothing, just looked at her. And that silence was more devastating than any shout. Robert, Diane began to say, but he raised a hand, asking her to be quiet. Don't, he said, and his voice was cold, distant. I don't want to hear it. Not now, maybe never. He took his phone out of his pocket and began taking pictures of Diane, of Ethan, of the bathroom, of everything. What are you doing? Diane asked, her eyes wide with shock. What I should have done a long time ago, Robert replied, without looking up from his phone. Documenting the truth. Because I know tomorrow you'll both try to deny it. You'll say it was all a misunderstanding. You'll make up excuses. But these photos will speak for me when my lawyer presents them. Diane turned pale. Lawyer? Yes, lawyer. I'm filing for divorce and I'm going to fight for everything. For the house, for the business, for every dollar I invested in this sham of a marriage. And these photos will make sure I get it. Diane collapsed. She fell to the floor, crying, begging, but Robert was no longer looking at her. He was done, and it showed. Emily, meanwhile, was still standing in the doorway, looking at Ethan, and he tried to approach her again. Emily, please listen to me. This was a mistake. A moment of weakness, but you're the one I love. You're my wife. I already called my lawyer, Emily said, and her voice sounded strangely calm. Too calm. Ethan froze. What? On my way here, I called my lawyer. I told him what my mom told me, and he said to document everything, not to let you leave this house until the police arrived if necessary, to get witnesses. She paused and looked him straight in the eye. And now that I see you here with her like this, I know I did the right thing by calling. Ethan took a step back as if Emily's words were blows. Emily, you can't do this. We're a marriage. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can't do anything, she interrupted him, because there is no us anymore. There is no marriage. There's just a man who cheated on his wife with his own cousin, and a woman who was stupid enough to believe in him for 5 years. Don't say that, Ethan said, and now his voice sounded desperate. You're not stupid. I want you to get out of my house. Now, Emily said. Now, Ethan, take your things and leave, and never come back. The silence that followed was so thick it hurt to breathe. Ethan looked at her. He searched her eyes for any sign of doubt, any crack he could slip through, but he found none. Because in that moment, my daughter ceased to be the submissive woman who had justified strange messages, who had silenced her doubts, who had swallowed her pain to keep the peace. In that moment, Emily became what she always should have been. A woman who doesn't accept crumbs, a woman who doesn't negotiate her dignity. Ethan walked out of the bathroom, passed by Emily without looking at her, walked to the bedroom they had shared for 5 years, and began to pull clothes from the closet to stuff things into a suitcase while we watched him in silence. Diane tried to get up, but Robert stopped her. You stay here, he told her, until I decide what to do with you. Meanwhile, I watched my daughter. I saw the tears streaming down her face. I saw her body tremble, but I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw determination. I saw a woman who was breaking but who was not giving up. I went to her and hugged her, and when her head rested on my shoulder, she whispered, I did the right thing, Mom. You did what was right, honey, and that's all that matters. Ethan came out of the bedroom with a suitcase in his hand. He stopped in front of Emily, tried to say something, but she raised a hand, silencing him. Goodbye, Ethan, she said. And may God forgive you, because I'm not going to. He lowered his gaze and, without another word, walked out of the house. The door closed behind him with a sound that seemed to seal the end of an era. Robert helped Diane to her feet. She was still crying, muttering apologies no one wanted to hear. We're leaving, Robert told her. And when we get home, you're going to pack your things, because I'm starting the divorce proceedings tomorrow. Diane tried to cling to his arm, but he firmly pulled away. Please, Robert, please forgive me. No, he said, and it was the clearest answer he had given in years. This is over. They left the house, and when the door closed for the second time, Emily fell apart. She sank to the floor, crying, screaming, releasing all the pain she had been holding in. And I knelt beside her, hugged her, held her. Because that's what mothers do. We hold. Even when we're broken too. Even when we're scared too. Because we know that after the storm, the calm always comes. And that the women who learn to let go of what hurts them are the ones who find peace. As I tell you all this, I wonder where you might be listening from. Write the name of your city in the comments. That night, I stayed with Emily. I couldn't leave her alone. Not after what had happened. When she finally stopped crying, when her body stopped shaking, I helped her up from the floor and led her to the sofa. I made her a chamomile tea, the same kind I used to make for her when she was a little girl and had nightmares, and I sat beside her in silence, because sometimes words are unnecessary. Outside, night had fallen. The streetlights came on one by one. The world kept spinning as if nothing had happened. But inside that house, everything had changed. My daughter's marriage was over. The family she had built with so much love had crumbled in a matter of minutes. And now, in the silence of that living room, the real work began. Picking up the pieces. Emily held the teacup in her hands, staring at the hot liquid without drinking it. "When did you know, Mom?" she asked suddenly without looking up. "Know what, honey?" "That something wasn't right. That Ethan. That he wasn't the man I thought he was." I sighed. It was a difficult question because the truth was complicated. "A while ago," I admitted. But I wasn't sure. I just had feelings, uncomfortable moments. Small things I couldn't prove, but that unsettled me. "Why did you never say anything to me?" She looked into my eyes. Those eyes I knew so well. Those eyes that had looked at me with trust for 31 years. Because I didn't want to be that meddling mother who ruins her daughter's happiness over suspicions. Because I thought maybe I was wrong. I paused, feeling the weight of guilt. Because I was afraid that if I told you something and I was wrong, you would push me out of your life. Emily put the cup down on the table, turned to me, and took my hands. "Mom, listen to me carefully. You are not to blame for anything. None of this is your responsibility. Ethan is the only one to blame. He and Diane. They chose to betray us. They chose to lie. You just protected me, like you always have." Her words broke me. The tears I had been holding back all day finally came, and the two of us cried together, holding each other, releasing the pain we had carried in silence. When we calmed down, Emily dried her eyes with the back of her hand and took a deep breath. "I need to know how long," she said, and her voice sounded firmer. "I need to know how long they were lying to me. I don't know if that will help you, honey. Maybe not, but I need to know anyway. I need to understand. I need to understand how much of my life was real and how much was a lie." I nodded, because I understood her. Because when you're betrayed, you need answers, even if those answers hurt. "Do you want to go through his things?" I asked her. She looked at me, hesitating, then nodded. We got up from the sofa and walked to the bedroom. The room Emily had shared with Ethan for 5 years. The room where they had slept together, dreamed together, planned a future that was now shattered into 1,000 pieces. Emily turned on the light. The bed was unmade. Ethan's suitcase had left the closet half empty, but there were still things left. Clothes, papers, personal items he hadn't had time to take. "Where do I start?" Emily murmured, looking around with a mix of pain and determination. "Wherever your instinct tells you," I replied. She walked to the nightstand on Ethan's side of the bed. She opened the top drawer. There were papers, receipts, an old wallet, keys he no longer used. Nothing important. She opened the second drawer. More of the same, and then the third. And that's when she found it. A plain white envelope, hidden under some work documents. Emily pulled it out with trembling hands. She looked at me. "Should I open it?" "It's your decision, honey." She took a deep breath and opened it. Inside were photos, lots of them. And when Emily pulled them out, her face fell. They were pictures of Ethan and Diane. Together in places Emily didn't recognize, in restaurants, in hotels, on the beach, hugging, kissing, smiling as if they were a real couple. "Oh my God," Emily whispered, and her voice sounded as if something inside her was breaking. "Oh my God, Mom, look at the dates." I took the photos from her hands because I saw she was about to fall apart, and when I looked at them, I understood why. The photos had dates printed on the back, and the dates were from 3 years ago. 3 years. That meant the betrayal wasn't recent. It wasn't a one-night mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a relationship, a parallel relationship that had been going on for years behind Emily's back. 3 years, Emily said, and she started to laugh. But it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was a bitter, broken laugh, full of pain. 3 years, Mom. 3 damn years he was lying to me. 3 years he was sleeping with me, telling me he loved me, planning a future with me while he had another life with her. She collapsed onto the bed, clutching the photos to her chest. How could I have been so blind? How did I not realize? I sat beside her and stroked her hair. Because you trusted him, honey. Because when you love someone, you're not looking for reasons to distrust them. You're looking for reasons to believe, and he used that against you. Emily shook her head, crying. I should have known. I should have pushed harder when I found those messages. I should have investigated. I should have... Don't, I interrupted her firmly. Don't do that. Don't blame yourself for someone else's malice. You did what any woman who loves would do. You trusted, you believed, you forgave. And there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is what he did, not what you failed to do. Emily fell silent, absorbing my words. Then, with a sudden movement, she got up from the bed. I need to keep looking, she said. I need to know everything. She opened the closet, checked the pockets of the shirts Ethan had left behind, checked the boxes on the top shelf, checked every corner of that room as if she were a detective searching for clues to a crime. And in a way, she was. And she found more things. She found hotel receipts, receipts from expensive restaurants where Ethan was supposedly in work meetings. She found bills for gifts, perfumes, jewelry, clothes, all for Diane. This necklace, Emily said, holding up a bill. He told me it was for his mom, for her birthday, and I believed him. I believed everything. She kept looking, and at the back of the closet, under a shoebox, she found something else. A phone. An old phone that Ethan had supposedly stopped using. Emily turned it on. It still had a charge, and when the screen lit up, there was no password, because Ethan never thought anyone would find it. Emily opened the messages, and there it was. All of it. Years of conversations with Diane. Explicit messages, plans to meet up, coordinated lies to deceive both Emily and Robert. Promises that one day they would be together for real, without having to hide. I hate having to pretend we're just cousins, Emily read aloud, her voice trembling. Soon I'm going to leave everything and we'll go away together. She looked up at me. Do you see, Mom? He was planning on leaving me. All this time I was living a lie, thinking we had a future. And he was just waiting for the right moment to destroy me. Emily, no, Mom. Don't tell me everything is going to be okay, because it's not. 5 years of my life. 5 years I'll never get back. 5 years I wasted on a man who never truly loved me. She sank to the floor, holding the phone, crying with a pain that came from the depths of her soul. And I knelt beside her, hugged her, and let her cry as much as she needed to, because sometimes grieving is necessary. Crying is necessary. Rage is necessary. Before you can heal, you first need to release all the poison that was fed to you. We spent hours in that room, searching, discovering, crying. And with every new piece of evidence we found, the betrayal grew larger, crueler, more unforgivable. There were photos from trips Ethan had supposedly taken alone for work, but there was Diane by his side, smiling on paradise beaches, while Emily stayed home working, waiting for him, trusting him. There were emails where Ethan and Diane talked about Emily and Robert as if they were obstacles, as if they were problems they would eventually solve. There were even conversations where Diane told Ethan that Robert was suspicious, but that she always knew how to calm him down, how to manipulate him, how to make him believe everything was fine. They're monsters, Emily said, and she wasn't crying anymore. Now her eyes were dry, cold. They're both monsters who played with our lives as if it were a game. Yes, I said, but the game is over, and now they're going to have to face the consequences. Emily looked at me. Do you think Robert is discovering all this too? Probably. And if he's half the man I think he is, he's not going to just stand by. Emily nodded, and for the first time all night, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't pain. It was determination. "I'm calling my lawyer first thing in the morning," she said. "I'm going to give him all this evidence, and I'm going to make sure Ethan gets nothing. Nothing of what we built together. Because what we built was with my work, with my effort, with my trust. And all he contributed was lies." "Good," I said, feeling proud of my daughter. "That's exactly what you have to do." We sat there on the floor of that room, surrounded by evidence of a betrayal that had lasted for years. And although the pain was immense, although the wound was deep, I knew my daughter was going to get through this, because she was strong, because she was a fighter, because she had something Ethan and Diane never had: dignity. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What would you have done in my place? I woke up on the sofa in Emily's living room. I hadn't slept well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face, smiling at me with that cruel arrogance when he told me no one would believe a crazy old woman. I saw the pictures of him and Diane, embracing in places they should never have been together. I saw my daughter, broken on the floor, holding the proof of a betrayal that had lasted for years. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw a woman who, despite the pain, was choosing to fight back, choosing not to stay silent. And that, in the midst of so much darkness, was a light. I got up slowly, trying not to make noise. Emily was asleep in her room. It had taken her hours to fall asleep. I had heard her crying, pacing back and forth, sighing. But eventually, exhaustion won, and now she needed that rest because the days ahead were not going to be easy. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. The aroma filled the house, that comforting smell that always reminded me of quiet mornings, of days when the world still made sense. I poured 2 cups and sat by the window watching the city wake up. The birds were singing, neighbors were leaving for work. Life went on, indifferent to the pain that dwelled within these walls. I heard footsteps behind me. It was Emily. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were swollen, her clothes were wrinkled, but she was on her feet, and that was what mattered. "Good morning, honey," I said, handing her a cup of coffee. "Good morning, Mom," she replied, taking the cup and sitting across from me. We drank in silence for a few minutes, a silence that wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence of understanding, between 2 women who knew that words are sometimes not enough to heal, but company is. "I called my lawyer," Emily said suddenly. "An hour ago. I sent him photos of everything we found last night." "And what did he say?" "He said I have a solid case. That with all this evidence, Ethan has no way to defend himself. That I can file for divorce on grounds of adultery and keep the house, the car, everything we bought together. Because even though many things are in both our names, the proof of his infidelity favors me." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. At least on the legal front, my daughter had control. "And how do you feel about that?" Emily looked down at her coffee cup. "I don't know, Mom. I should feel relieved, right? I should feel powerful. But I just feel empty, as if everything I worked for, everything I believed in, was a lie." "It wasn't a lie, honey. You loved for real. You were honest. You built something real. The fact that he wasn't worthy of that love doesn't mean your love was false." Emily looked up. Her eyes were full of tears, but also something else: understanding. "You know what hurts the most, Mom?" "Tell me." "That I trusted him completely. I opened my heart, my home, my life to him. And he used that trust to destroy me. I woke up every morning next to him, made him breakfast, asked him how he slept, told him I loved him. And he would smile at me, kiss me, tell me he loved me too. And all that time, all that damn time, he was thinking about her." Her voice broke, but she didn't cry. It was as if she had no tears left. "Do you know how many times, Mom? How many times I told him I wanted to have a baby with him? How many times I dreamed of starting a family? And he always told me not yet, that we should wait a little longer, that he wanted to be more financially stable. And I believed him. I thought he was responsible, that he was thinking about our future. But now I understand he was just buying time. Time to be with her without having to deal with a child that would tie him to me forever. I closed my eyes, feeling the rage build inside me. Rage against Ethan. Rage against Diane. Rage against everyone who feels entitled to play with people's feelings as if they were game pieces. Emily, I said, taking her hands, listen to me carefully. What Ethan did is unforgivable, and what Diane did is too. But you can't let that define you. You can't let their betrayal rob you of the ability to trust again, to love again, to dream again. How am I supposed to trust anyone again, Mom? How can I ever believe another man when the man who swore to love me lied to me for years? I don't know, I admitted. But I know that the pain of today won't be the pain of forever. I know you're going to heal little by little, and I know that when the time comes, when the right person comes along, you'll know how to recognize them, because now you know what to look for. Now you know which signs to ignore and which to pay attention to. Emily nodded slowly, processing my words. Do you think Robert is going through the same thing? I'm sure of it. At that moment, as if the universe had heard our conversation, Emily's phone buzzed. It was a message from Robert. Emily opened it and read it aloud. Emily, it's Robert. I hope you're doing okay, all things considered. Last night I went through Diane's phone. I found everything. Messages, photos, all of it. My lawyer is already preparing the divorce papers. Diane is going to be left with nothing. I wanted you to know that, and I wanted to thank you and your mom for having the courage to show me the truth. I know it wasn't easy, but you freed me from a lie I've been carrying for years. If you need to talk or if you need help with the legal process, I'm here. You're not alone in this. Emily finished reading the message and stared at the screen in silence. He's a good man, I said. Yes, Emily replied. He is. And Diane destroyed him, just like Ethan destroyed me. But they didn't leave you destroyed, I told her. They left you wounded, which is different, because wounds heal, and when they heal, they make you stronger. Emily replied to Robert. Thanks for writing. Robert, I found a lot of things last night too. Things I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but that I needed to know. My lawyer is also getting everything ready. And you're right. We're not alone. We have each other as witnesses that we weren't crazy, that our suspicions were real. Thank you for that. She put the phone on the table and looked at me. Do you think Ethan will try to contact me? Probably. Men like him always try to come back. They always try to manipulate, convince, make you doubt your decision. I'm not going to answer him. Good. I blocked his number last night. I blocked Diane too. I don't want to hear from them ever again. That's the best decision you could have made. Emily took a deep breath and stood up from the table. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to get ready and I'm going to see my lawyer in person. I want to make sure everything is in order. I want to make sure Ethan can't hurt me anymore. I watched her walk to the bathroom with firm, determined steps, and I felt proud. Because my daughter, despite being broken, was not giving up. She was rising. While I waited, I started cleaning the house. I picked up the coffee cups, washed the dishes, tidied the living room, and when I got to the bedroom, I saw all the evidence we had found the night before still scattered on the bed, the photos, the receipts, the phone. I gathered them carefully and put them in a box that Emily would take to her lawyer, a box full of truths that had been hidden for years. And as I closed that box, I thought about something. I thought about how many women in the world are living lies without knowing it. How many are trusting men who don't deserve that trust? How many are ignoring signs because they're afraid of what they might discover? And I thought about how important it is to listen to that inner voice. That voice that tells you something isn't right. That voice that makes you uneasy when you see things that don't add up. Because that voice, many times, is the one that saves you. Emily came out of the bathroom an hour later. She had gotten ready, put on makeup, done her hair. She was wearing a simple but elegant dress, and although her eyes still showed traces of crying, they also showed determination. I'm ready, she told me. Do you want me to come with you? No, Mom. I need to do this alone. But thank you for everything, for being here, for not judging me, for protecting me, for being the mother you've always been. I hugged her tight as when she was a little girl and afraid of the dark, as tight as when she was a teenager and suffered her first heartbreak, as tight as now, when she was facing the worst betrayal of her life. I'll always be here, honey. Always. Emily left for her appointment with the lawyer, and I stayed at the house waiting, thinking, processing everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. I had come to this house to organize a surprise party and had ended up witnessing a betrayal that had been going on for years. I had been insulted, underestimated, called a crazy old woman by a man who thought he could get away with it. But that man had been wrong. Because I wasn't a crazy old woman. I was a mother, a woman, a guardian of the truth. And I had done the right thing. I had closed that door, I had made those calls, I had put the cards on the table. And now my daughter and Robert had the chance to rebuild their lives, to heal, to start over. And Ethan and Diane would have to face the consequences of their actions. Because life, sooner or later, always collects its debts. And the truth, no matter how much it hurts, is always better than a lie. 2 weeks had passed since that day. 2 weeks in which Emily's life changed completely. 2 weeks in which the lawyers moved quickly. In which papers were signed. In which the truths officially came to light. 2 weeks in which my daughter learned that losing everything doesn't mean being left with nothing, as long as you keep your dignity. I continued to visit her every day. Sometimes I'd stay the night. Other times I'd just spend a few hours making her food, listening to her, holding her when the weight of it all became too much. Because the process of a divorce isn't just legal, it's emotional, it's gut-wrenching, it's like tearing out roots that have been growing for years, even if those roots were poisoned. Emily had filed for divorce on grounds of adultery. Her lawyer had been clear. With all the evidence they had, Ethan had no possible defense. The photos, the messages, the receipts, the secret phone, it all pointed to a sustained infidelity over years. And in such cases, the law favors the wronged party. But Ethan wasn't going to give up easily. One afternoon, while Emily and I were in the living room reviewing some documents the lawyer had sent, the doorbell rang. Emily tensed up immediately. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked. "No," she replied, her voice trembling. I got up and walked to the window. I looked outside and there he was, Ethan, standing at the door with a bouquet of flowers in his hands and an expression that tried to look regretful. "It's him," I told Emily. She turned pale. "I don't want to see him." "You don't have to." But Ethan rang the bell again and then shouted, "Emily, I know you're in there. Please let me talk to you." Just 5 minutes. Emily closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "I'm going to talk to him," she said. "But I'm doing it here at the door. He is not setting foot in this house ever again." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I need to do this. I need to look him in the eye and say everything I've been holding back." I nodded and walked with her to the door. Emily opened it, and there was Ethan. With his hair perfectly styled, his clothes impeccable, flowers in hand, as if that could erase 3 years of lies. "Emily," he said, his voice soft, almost broken. "Thank you for opening. What do you want, Ethan?" Emily interrupted, her voice cold and distant. "I want to talk to you. I want to explain." "There's nothing to explain. I found everything. The photos, the messages, all of it." Ethan lowered his gaze. "I know I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But a mistake." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "You call 3 years of infidelity a mistake? 3 years of lying to my face every single day? 3 years of sleeping with me while you were planning a future with her?" "Emily, please." "Don't," she interrupted again. "Don't tell me, please. Don't tell me you're sorry. Don't bring me flowers as if that's going to fix anything, because it won't. Nothing you say or do will change what you did." Ethan took a step toward her, but Emily held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't come any closer. I just want you to listen to me. I just want you to understand that you're the one I love, that Diane was. She was just a distraction. It was a weakness. But my heart has always been with you." Emily looked at him steadily, and then, with a voice so calm it sent shivers down my spine, she said. You know what, Ethan? Maybe at some point, that would have mattered to me. Maybe 2 weeks ago, if you had said that to me, I might have hesitated. I might have considered forgiving you, because that's how stupid I was. That's how blind I was. But now, after seeing the pictures of you two on beaches where you told me you were working, after reading the messages where you made fun of me and Robert, after understanding that I was never your priority. After all that, I no longer care what you feel. I no longer care what you want. I only care about one thing, you getting out of my life forever. Ethan looked at her, stunned, as if he couldn't believe Emily was speaking to him this way. Emily, you can't be serious. We're a marriage. We've been together for 5 years. You can't just throw all of that away. I didn't throw anything away, Ethan. You did. You destroyed this marriage the day you decided to sleep with your cousin. You destroyed it every time you lied to me. Every time you made me feel guilty for being suspicious. Every time you told me I was crazy for feeling like something was wrong. You destroyed this, not me. Ethan tried to take her hand, but Emily pulled it back immediately. Don't touch me. Emily, please, give me a chance. We can go to therapy. We can fix this. I'll change, I swear. I'll do whatever it takes to win back your trust. I don't want your change. I don't want your therapy. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to sign the divorce papers and leave. Ethan looked at her with tear-filled eyes, and for a moment, he almost seemed like a repentant man. But Emily was no longer fooled by appearances. And the house? Ethan asked, changing his tactic. You're just going to keep everything? Yes, Emily replied, because I was the one who worked to buy this house. I was the one who put down the down payment. I was the one who paid the mortgage while you were spending your salary taking Diane to expensive hotels. So yes, I'm keeping this house and the car and everything we bought together because you don't deserve anything. Ethan clenched his fists, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't regret. It was rage. This isn't over, he said, his voice menacing. My lawyer is going to fight this. I'll make sure you don't get everything. Fight all you want, Emily replied unfazed. But you're going to lose. Because I have proof, I have witnesses, I have everything I need to prove you were an unfaithful, lying, manipulative husband. And when the judge sees all of that, you'll be left with nothing. Ethan threw the flowers to the ground. You're a bitch, he said, and the word dripped from his mouth like venom. But Emily didn't flinch, didn't break. She just looked at him with a tranquility I didn't know she possessed. Maybe, she said, but I'm a bitch with dignity, and that's more than you'll ever have. Ethan turned and walked to his car. Before getting in, he spun around one last time and yelled, You're going to regret this, Emily. You're going to end up alone. No one will ever love you like I did. Emily smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a liberating one. If that's how you loved me, Ethan, then I'd rather be alone. Ethan got in his car and drove away, leaving the flowers scattered on the ground. Emily closed the door and leaned against it. She took a deep breath and then looked at me. I did it, Mom. I told him everything. And I didn't break. I hugged her tightly. I'm so proud of you, honey. She let herself be hugged. And though she didn't cry, I felt her body tremble, not from fear, but from relief. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers, signing documents, giving statements. The legal process moved quickly. Ethan tried to fight for the house, but the evidence was overwhelming. His infidelity was documented, and under the law, Emily was entitled to the assets acquired during the marriage. Diane, for her part, was also facing her own hell. Robert had kept his word. He filed for divorce, and since he was the one who had funded the business they owned together, he managed to keep everything. Diane lost the house, lost the business, lost it all. One day, Robert wrote to Emily, The divorce is almost final. Diane moved in with her mother. She tried to convince me to forgive her. She cried, she begged. But I've already made my decision, and I feel at peace. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Emily replied, I'm glad you're at peace, Robert. You deserve it. Ethan tried to convince me too. He came to the house with flowers and promises, but I've also made my decision, and like you, I feel like I can breathe again. Robert texted back, Would you like to get coffee sometime? Not as a date. just as two people who went through the same thing and who might be able to help each other heal. Emily showed me the message. What do you think, Mom? I think Robert is a good man, and there's nothing wrong with two wounded people supporting each other, but only you know if you're ready for that. Emily thought for a moment and then typed, I'd like that. How about this weekend? And so, in the midst of loss, something new began to grow. Not a romance, not yet, but a friendship, a mutual understanding, a safe space where two people who had been betrayed could talk without being judged. Emily lost her marriage. She lost 5 years of her life. She lost the dream of a future she had planned with so much love. But she didn't lose her dignity. She didn't lose her strength. She didn't lose her ability to get back up. And in the midst of all the pain, that was the most important thing. Because when you face betrayal with your head held high, when you speak your truth without trembling, when you choose your well-being over the comfort of maintaining a lie, you are winning. Even if you don't feel it at the moment, you are winning your freedom, your peace, your right to start over. And my daughter, my beautiful, brave daughter, had understood that. A month after that day, I locked Ethan and Diane in the bathroom. Life had found a different rhythm. Emily had signed the final divorce papers. The house was now entirely hers, the car too. Ethan was left with practically nothing, just as she had predicted. His lawyer tried to fight, but the evidence was just too overwhelming. In the end, Ethan had to accept defeat. I still visited Emily regularly, but now the visits were different. I no longer came to comfort her while she cried. I came to have coffee while she told me about her plans, about how she was redecorating the house, making it her own, about how she was thinking of reviving her clothing boutique project that she had abandoned years ago because Ethan always told her it wasn't the right time. My daughter was healing, slowly, painfully, but she was healing. And Robert had become a constant presence in that healing process. They saw each other often, had coffee, walked in the park, talked for hours about what they had been through, about how they felt, about how it was possible that two people who had shared their lives with them could have betrayed them that way. And in those conversations, they found something they hadn't had in a long time: understanding. One afternoon, Emily came to my house. I was in the garden watering the plants when I heard her car pull up. She got out with a smile on her face, a genuine smile, the kind I hadn't seen in a long time. "Hi, Mom," she said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "Hi, honey. You look good." "I feel good," she replied. And she meant it. We went inside and sat in the living room. I poured her a glass of cold water and sat across from her. "Did something happen?" I asked, noticing something different about her, something lighter. "Yes," she said, and her eyes sparkled. "I saw Diane today." I tensed up immediately. "Where?" "At the supermarket. She was in the produce section. I was just walking in and I saw her. And for a moment, I thought about turning around and leaving. But then I thought, why should I be the one to run? I didn't do anything wrong." So I kept walking. "And did she see you?" "Yes, we saw each other." "And you know what? Mom?" It was revealing. "What do you mean?" Emily took a sip of water and sighed. Diane looked awful. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes were wrinkled. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't the impeccable woman she used to be. And when she saw me, she turned pale. She tried to hide behind a shelf, but it was too late. I had already seen her. "Did you talk to her?" "No." But she talked to me. She approached me with her head down and said, "Emily, I am so sorry. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." "And what did you say to her?" Emily looked at me. "I told her the truth, Mom. I said, I don't forgive you, and I probably never will, because what you did is unforgivable. But I don't hate you either, because hating you would be giving too much importance to someone who means nothing in my life anymore. So I just hope you learn to live with what you did, because I've already learned to live without you and without Ethan." I felt a lump in my throat, because those words didn't come from a place of pain. They came from a place of clarity, of acceptance, of peace. "And what did she say?" "Nothing." She just stood there looking at me with tears in her eyes, and then I kept walking because I had nothing more to say to her. Emily put the glass down on the table and took my hands. You know what I understood today, Mom? I understood that I don't need Diane to suffer to feel better. I don't need Ethan to repent for me to heal, because my healing doesn't depend on them. It depends on me, on my ability to let go of what hurt me, on my ability to move forward without carrying that resentment. That's wisdom, honey, I said, feeling both proud and emotional. That's exactly what you needed to understand. And I learned it from you, Mom. From the way you handled everything that day. You could have yelled at Ethan, you could have hit Diane, you could have made a scene. But you didn't. You just did what was necessary. You locked them in, called the right people, and let the truth speak for itself. You didn't need revenge because you knew that time would take care of justice. I nodded, remembering that moment, remembering the temptation I had to scream at them, to insult them, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain they had caused, but also remembering the conscious decision I made not to, because revenge never brings peace, only more pain. Time always delivers justice, honey, I said. Always. Maybe not in the way we expect, maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but it always does. Emily nodded. Diane lost her marriage, her house, her business, and now she's living with her mother in a small room, working at a shop to pay her debts. Robert told me. He says the last time he saw her, she tried to apologize to him too, but he told her the same thing I did, that he didn't hate her, but he didn't forgive her either, and that she would have to learn to live with the consequences of her actions. And Ethan. Ethan is also facing his consequences. He lost the house, the car, he's living in a small apartment, sharing with a coworker. And Diane, after everything that happened, didn't want to stay with him. Because she also understood something, that a man who is capable of cheating on his wife is capable of cheating on anyone. So now they're both alone, each carrying the weight of what they did. That's poetic justice, I said. They sought their happiness at the expense of yours, and in the end, they found neither. Exactly, Emily said. And I, on the other hand, am finding my peace. I'm rebuilding my life. I'm learning to trust again, in myself, in the future, and maybe, one day, in someone else. I looked at her curiously. Are you talking about Robert? Emily blushed a little. I don't know, Mom. Robert is... He's wonderful. He's kind, respectful, understanding. We've spent a lot of time together and I feel comfortable with him. More comfortable than I ever felt with Ethan. But I'm also scared. Scared to trust again, scared to open my heart again and get hurt. That fear is normal, honey, and it's healthy. Because it means you're being careful. That you're not rushing into something without thinking. But you also have to remember that not all men are like Ethan. Not all relationships end in betrayal. And Robert, so far, has shown you he's different. I know. And that's why I'm taking things slow. No rush, just letting things flow. That's wise. Emily smiled. He invited me to dinner next weekend, to a restaurant like a real date. And I said yes. I felt a surge of joy for my daughter, because after so much darkness, she was finally allowing herself to see a little light. I'm so happy for you, honey. You deserve it. You deserve to be happy. You deserve a man who values you, who respects you, who truly loves you. Thank you, Mom. For everything. For being there. For not hesitating to lock them in. For making those calls. Because if you hadn't done that, maybe I'd still be living in that lie. Maybe I'd still be married to Ethan, believing we were happy, while he was still seeing Diane behind my back. I did what any mother would do, honey. Protect you, even if it meant showing you a painful truth. But not all mothers would do it, Mom. There are mothers who prefer silence, who prefer not to get involved, who prefer to let their daughters find things out for themselves, even if it means more pain. But not you. You had the courage to act, and that saved me. I hugged her tightly, and in that embrace, I felt that all the pain we had gone through over the last month was worth it. Because my daughter was okay. She was healing, she was finding her way. The following days were calmer. Emily moved on with her life. She started the process of opening her clothing boutique. Robert helped her with some contacts, with some advice, and slowly, the friendship between them blossomed into something more. It wasn't a fairy tale romance. There were no grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was something subtle, natural, like two people who, after being hurt, found each other and decided to give it a chance, calmly, with respect, with honesty. And I, from my place as a mother, watched it all with gratitude, because I knew my daughter was in good hands. Not just in Robert's hands, but in her own. Because she had learned to value herself, to respect herself, to not settle for less than she deserved. One day, while we were having coffee at her house, Emily said something to me that I'll never forget. "Mom, you once asked me what I would have done in your place that day when I found you in the bathroom with Ethan and Diane, and I didn't answer because I didn't know, but now I do." "What would you have done?" "Exactly what you did, because I understand now that sometimes the most loving act you can do for someone is to show them the truth, even if it hurts, even if it destroys. Because a painful truth is always better than a comfortable lie." I smiled, feeling that my daughter had grown, not just in age, but in wisdom. "That's right, honey. That's right." And as I looked at her, I thought about how life has a strange way of balancing things. Ethan and Diane had lost everything. Not because I sought revenge, not because Emily and Robert destroyed them, but because the natural consequences of their actions caught up with them. Because when you build your happiness on lies, on betrayal, on the pain of others, sooner or later, that house comes crashing down, and there's no way to hold it up. And we, the ones who were hurt, learned something valuable. We learned that justice doesn't always need shouting. It doesn't always need revenge. Sometimes it just needs time and truth, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing you did the right thing. I locked two traitors in a bathroom, not to punish them, but to protect my daughter, to give her the chance to see with her own eyes what I had already seen. And that decision, that silent act, changed everything. Because sometimes the most powerful act is the simplest one: closing a door, making two calls, and letting the truth speak for itself. 6 months had passed since that day that changed everything. 6 months in which life had taken paths none of us had imagined. Emily had opened her clothing boutique. It was small, but it was growing. More customers came in every day, drawn by her good taste, her fair prices, and the warmth with which she treated them. My daughter had found her purpose, and it made her shine in a way Ethan never could. She and Robert were officially a couple. They hadn't rushed. They had taken their time to get to know each other, to heal together, to build something solid on a foundation of honesty and respect. And seeing them together was to see two people who had finally found what they deserved: a true love, without lies, without betrayals, without masks. I continued to visit Emily regularly, but now the visits were different. I no longer came to comfort. I came to celebrate, to laugh, to plan, to enjoy seeing my daughter happy. But one day, everything changed again. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at home making dinner when my phone rang. It was Emily. "Mom." Her voice sounded strange, not sad, but not happy either. It was bewildered. "What's wrong, honey?" "I just got a call from Ethan." My blood ran cold. What did he want? "He wants to see me. He says it's urgent, that he needs to talk to me." "And what did you tell him?" That I have nothing to talk to him about. But he insisted. He said he's sick, Mom, that he needs my help. I frowned. Sick with what? He wouldn't tell me over the phone. He just said he needed to see me, one last time. I sighed. I knew men like Ethan. They always try to come back. They always look for one last chance. They always have an excuse, a plea, a trap. "Do you want to see him?" Emily was silent for a moment. "I don't know, Mom. Part of me says no, that I owe him nothing, that I've closed that chapter. But another part is curious, wants to know what happened to him, how he is. Not because I care in a romantic sense, but because, I don't know. Maybe I need that final closure. If you decide to see him, don't go alone. I want to go with you." "Okay." "I'll tell him he can come to the store tomorrow at noon when there are people around. I don't want to be alone with him." "That sounds good. I'll be there." That night, I couldn't sleep well. I kept thinking about Ethan, about what he was up to, what game he was playing now. Because manipulators never change, they just refine their strategies. The next day, I arrived at Emily's store early. She was helping a customer, showing her some dresses. When she finished, she came over to me. "Are you ready?" I asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." At 12 o'clock sharp, Ethan arrived. I saw him through the store window before he entered, and I almost didn't recognize him. The man who had been my son-in-law, the man who had smiled with arrogance as he called me a crazy old woman, no longer existed. In his place was a gaunt man with a pale face, deep dark circles under his eyes, clothes that hung on him as if he had lost a lot of weight in a short time. He entered the store slowly, looked at Emily, and in his eyes was something I had never seen before: defeat. "Hello, Emily," he said, his voice weak and flat. "Hello, Ethan," she replied, keeping her distance. "You said you needed to talk to me. Here I am. But you have 10 minutes, no more." Ethan looked around. He saw the customers browsing, saw me standing next to Emily with my arms crossed, and knew he wasn't going to get the privacy he had probably hoped for. "Can we talk outside?" he asked. "No," Emily said firmly. "Here is fine. Say what you have to say." Ethan lowered his gaze, took a deep breath, and when he looked up at her again, his eyes were filled with tears. "I'm sick, Emily. Very sick." "With what?" "Stomach cancer. Advanced stage." The silence that followed was thick. Emily looked at him, processing the information, and I looked at him too, trying to detect if this was another one of his lies. But something in the way he said it, in the fragility of his body, made me think that this time he was telling the truth. "How long?" Emily asked. "The doctors say maybe 6 months, maybe a year. It depends on how I respond to treatment. But I don't have money for the treatment, Emily. I lost everything, my job, my apartment, everything. I'm living with my sister and she can barely help me." Emily looked at him steadily. "And you're telling me this because you want me to help you?" He nodded, wiping away tears. "I know I have no right. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I have no one else. Please, Emily. Please." My daughter said nothing for a moment, and I could see the conflict in her eyes, the part of her that still remembered the man she had fallen in love with, and the part of her that remembered the man who had betrayed her for years. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm sorry you're sick. I truly am. But I'm not going to help you." Ethan looked at her, shocked. "Emily, please." "Don't," she interrupted. "Listen to me carefully. For 5 years, I was by your side. I supported you, I believed you, I loved you. And you repaid me with lies, with betrayal, with humiliation. Now you come here sick, asking for help, and you want me after everything you did to me to save you? But you know what, Ethan? I am not your salvation. I never was. And I'm not going to be now. Emily, I'm begging you. And I begged you so many times. I begged you to tell me the truth when I found those messages. I begged you to stop making me feel crazy when my gut told me something was wrong. I begged you to respect me, and you didn't. So now, when you're the one begging, don't expect me to be any different than you were with me." Ethan broke down. He covered his face with his hands and started to sob. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered all the pain he had caused my daughter, and that pity vanished. "And Diane?" Emily asked. "Can't she help you?" Ethan looked up, his face filled with bitterness. "Diane left me. When I lost the money, when I lost everything, she left. She said she couldn't be with a man who had nothing to offer her. She said what we had was a mistake, and she left without looking back." There it was, poetic justice in its purest form. The man who had betrayed his wife for his cousin was now abandoned by that same cousin when he no longer had anything to give. "So now you know how it feels," Emily said, her voice calm but firm. "Now you know what it's like to be abandoned by someone you trusted. Now you know what it's like to be left alone, without support, without love, without anything. And maybe, just maybe, That will help you understand a fraction of the pain you caused me. Ethan looked at her with pleading eyes. Emily, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need your help. I have no one else. And I had no one either when you betrayed me. I only had my mom and myself, and I learned that was enough. So I wish you the best, Ethan. I hope you find the help you need. But it's not going to come from me. Ethan just stood there, broken. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the store. I watched him walk down the street, stooped, defeated, alone. And I thought about how life has a way of balancing things, not always in the way we expect, but always in the way we need. Emily turned to me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her face was serene. I did the right thing, Mom. You did the right thing, honey. You are not responsible for saving him. He made his choices, and now he's facing the consequences. She nodded. I know I should feel sorry for him, and maybe a small part of me does. But most of me just feels peace. Because I know I closed that door forever, and I'm never opening it again. That night, Emily called me. She told me Robert had stopped by the store after Ethan left, that she had told him everything, and that Robert had hugged her and told her he was proud of her, that what she had done required a strength few people possess. You know what he told me, Mom? Emily said. He told me he had also seen Diane a few weeks ago. She was working at a convenience store, earning minimum wage, living in a tiny room. She had tried to talk to him, to apologize, to ask for help. And he told her the exact same thing I told Ethan, that he was sorry for her, but he wasn't going to help her, because she had made her choices and now she had to live with them. Robert is a good man, I said. He is, Mom. And I think I finally understand something. I understand that the people who hurt us don't always get an immediate punishment. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes it takes months, but eventually life collects its debt. And when it does, it's in a way that no human revenge could ever match. That's right, honey. Life always collects its debts. The days passed, and then the weeks. And one day, Emily got a call from Ethan's sister. Ethan had died. The cancer had progressed faster than the doctors had anticipated. He died alone in a public hospital, with no one by his side. Emily cried when she got the news. Not because she still loved him, but because it's sad to see a life wasted, to see a man who could have had everything end up with nothing because of his own choices, his own lies. We went to the funeral. Not because Ethan deserved it, but because Emily needed that final closure. She needed to see that chapter of her life was completely over. The funeral was small. Only his sister, some distant cousins, and us were there. Diane didn't come. No one knew where she was. No one cared enough to look for her. As they lowered the casket, Emily walked up to it and said in a low voice, "You once called me crazy when I suspected you. Years later, I was building a new life while you were dying alone in a hospital. Life always collects its debts, Ethan. Always." And she turned and walked away without looking back. That night, we had dinner together at my house, Emily, Robert, and me. And for the first time in a long time, the conversation didn't revolve around the past. It revolved around the future, about plans for the store, about the possibility of Emily and Robert moving in together, about the possibility that one day I would be a grandmother. And as I listened to them talk, smile, dream, I thought about how it all began. With a key, with a locked door, with 2 phone calls. And I thought about how sometimes the smallest act can change the course of an entire life. Because if I hadn't arrived early that day, if I hadn't opened that door, if I hadn't found them, Emily would still be living in a lie, and Ethan and Diane would still be destroying lives without consequence. But I did arrive. I found them. I locked them in and made those calls. And the truth came out. And justice, though it was delayed, arrived. Not with revenge, not with screams, not with violence, but with something much more powerful, natural consequences. Because when you build your happiness on lies, on betrayal, on the pain of others sooner or later, it all comes crashing down, and you're left alone with your choices, with your regrets, with your emptiness. And that, in the end, is the most perfect justice of all. 2 years have passed since that day that changed our lives forever. 2 years since I arrived at my daughter's house to set up a surprise party that never happened. 2 years since I opened a door and found a truth no one wanted to see. 2 years since I turned a key and changed the fate of 4 people. And now, sitting in my garden with a cup of coffee in my hands and the afternoon sun on my face, I can look back and understand that everything had a purpose, that every decision I made that day, however painful, was necessary. Emily is happy, truly happy. Her clothing boutique has grown more than she ever imagined. She now has 2 locations and is planning to open a 3rd. She became a successful, respected, admired business owner. But more importantly, she became a woman who knows her worth, who doesn't negotiate her dignity, who doesn't accept crumbs disguised as love. And Robert is by her side. They got married 6 months ago. It was a small, intimate wedding, filled with people who truly love them. I was there, of course, in the front row, watching my daughter walk down the aisle with a smile that lit up the whole room. A smile not of illusion, but of certainty, of peace, of knowing that this time she was choosing well. When the officiant asked if they would love and respect each other all the days of their lives, they both said "I do," with a conviction that only people who know what it's like to lose, who know what it's like to be betrayed, can have. And because of that, they value every moment of honesty, every gesture of respect, every word of truth. After the ceremony, Emily came to me, took my hands, and with tears in her eyes said, "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for saving me that day, for not being afraid to show me the truth, for teaching me that true love doesn't hurt, that true love doesn't lie, that true love doesn't betray." I hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear, "You have nothing to thank me for, honey. I just did what any mother who loves her daughter would do. I protected you, even if it meant showing you something painful." And as I held her, I thought of all the mothers in the world who see things they don't like, who suspect things they don't want to confirm, who have that inner voice telling them something isn't right with the man sleeping next to their daughter, but who stay silent out of fear, of not wanting to be meddlesome, of not wanting to ruin the illusion of happiness. And I thought of how many daughters could have been saved from years of pain if their mothers had had the courage to speak, to act, to show the truth. I'm not saying all suspicions are true. I'm not saying all mothers should become private investigators. But I am saying that when something doesn't feel right, when something unsettles you, when you see signs that don't add up, you have a moral duty to say something, to not stay silent, because silence is often an accomplice to harm. A few weeks ago, Emily gave me news that filled my heart with joy. She's pregnant. She's going to have a girl, and she's already chosen her name. Hope. "Because that's what I found after so much darkness, Mom," she told me. Hope. Hope that things could get better. Hope that I could trust again. Hope that I could be happy again. And when that little girl, my granddaughter, is born, I'm going to hold her in my arms, look into her eyes, and promise her the same thing I promised her mother the day she was born, that I will always protect her, that I will always tell her the truth, even if it hurts, that I will always be there for her, through good times and bad. Because that's what the women in our family do. We hold each other up, we take care of each other, we tell each other the truths no one else wants to say. Sometimes I think about Ethan, about how he ended up, alone, sick, repentant. And I don't feel satisfaction in his suffering. But I don't feel guilt either, because he chose his path. He decided to betray. He decided to lie. He decided to build his happiness on my daughter's pain, and life, with its infinite wisdom, collected its debt. Not because I cursed him, not because Emily wished him ill, but because that's how the universe works. You reap what you sow. And Ethan sowed lies, betrayal, selfishness, and he reaped loneliness, sickness, abandonment. I also think about Diane. I don't know where she is now. I don't know how she is, and I don't really care. Because people who betray those who trust them, who destroy marriages, who play with others' feelings as if it were a game, eventually end up alone. Because no one wants to be around someone they can't trust. Robert told me recently that he heard through the grapevine that Diane tried to get back with him, that she sent him messages, letters, showed up at his work begging for a chance. But he didn't give in, because he learned, just like Emily, that forgiving someone who betrayed you isn't a sign of strength. It's a sign of a lack of self-love. I told her the same thing Emily told Ethan. Robert told me. That I was sorry she was alone, that I was sorry she was suffering, but that those were the consequences of her decisions, and that I had already closed that door forever. And I felt proud of him, because good men, the ones worth having, are the ones who know when to walk forward without looking back. Now, when I see Emily and Robert together, I see something I never saw in Emily's marriage to Ethan. I see respect. I see honesty. I see two people who take care of each other, who communicate, who have no secrets, who are building their relationship on a solid foundation, not on fragile lies. And I know that when Hope is born, she will grow up in a home full of true love. Not appearances, not masks, but real love. The kind that doesn't need to hide. Sometimes when I'm alone, I think about that day, about how everything could have been different if I had arrived 5 minutes later, or if I had decided not to go to Emily's house that day, or if I had ignored the noises coming from the bathroom. But I didn't. I arrived on time. I opened that door. I saw and I acted. And that action, that moment of courage, saved my daughter from years of pain. It gave her the chance to step out of a lie and into a truth. It gave her the chance to rebuild her life, to find real love, to be happy. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do it exactly the same way, without hesitation. Because protecting your daughter isn't just about feeding her when she's hungry or nursing her when she's sick. It's also about showing her the truths no one else will, even if those truths hurt, even if those truths destroy, because a painful truth is always better than a comfortable lie. Today, as I drink my coffee in this garden I've tended for so many years, I think of all the women who are going through what Emily went through. Women who feel something isn't right in their marriages. Women who see signs but are afraid to confirm them. Women who are living lies without knowing it. And if I could say anything to them, I would say this. Trust your intuition. That inner voice that tells you something doesn't add up, that something doesn't feel right, is not crazy, it's not exaggerating, it's trying to protect you. And when that voice speaks, listen to it. Investigate, ask questions, seek the truth, even if you're afraid of what you might find. Because living in a lie isn't living, it's surviving. And you deserve more than that. You deserve a love that doesn't have to hide, a love that doesn't have to lie, a love that doesn't have to betray. And if you discover that the person you love has been lying to you, remember this. The pain you feel today is not permanent. It's temporary. And on the other side of that pain, a new life is waiting for you. A life where you can trust again, where you can love again, where you can be happy again. But first, you have to have the courage to let go of what's hurting you. Even if it hurts, even if you're scared, even if you don't know what comes next. Because the future, however uncertain, is always better than a present filled with lies. And to the mothers who are reading this, who see things they don't like in their daughters' relationships, I say, do not stay silent. Do not ignore that inner voice. Do not be afraid of being called meddlesome, because protecting your daughter is your duty, and sometimes that means showing her truths no one else will. I locked 2 traitors in a bathroom, I made 2 phone calls, and I changed the course of my daughter's life. Was it easy? No. Was it painful? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because now my daughter is happy, truly happy, and she's building a family on a solid foundation, and she's going to teach her daughter the same values I taught her. Dignity, respect, self-love. And when Hope grows up, she will know she comes from a line of strong women. Women who don't accept crumbs, women who don't negotiate their dignity, women who hold each other up, who take care of each other, who speak the truth. And that will be my legacy. Not money, not property, but values, strength, wisdom. I finish my coffee. The sun is setting on the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, and I think about how lucky I am to have had the courage to act that day, to have protected my daughter, to have witnessed her transformation from a broken woman to a whole one. And I think of Ethan, of his last look when he called me a crazy old woman, and I smile. Because that crazy old woman was the one who uncovered his lie, who protected her daughter, who changed everything. And if I could see him again, I would tell him, "You underestimated the wrong woman, Ethan. Because a mother protecting her daughter is the most powerful force in the universe. And you learned that far too late. I get up from my chair, go inside, and get ready to go have dinner with Emily and Robert. Because today is a special day. Today they're going to reveal the design for Hope's nursery, and they want me to be there because I'm part of this family. This new family, born from the ashes of a lie. And as I drive to their house, I think about what I'm going to tell my granddaughter when she's born. I'm going to tell her this story, not to fill her with fear, but to teach her that the women in our family don't give up, they don't accept less than they deserve, and they always, always tell the truth. Because the truth, even when it hurts, always sets you free. And I set my daughter free with a key, with 2 calls, with the courage to act when others would have stayed silent. And if my story helps just one woman to open her eyes, if it helps just one mother to have the courage to protect her daughter, if it helps just one person understand that they deserve more than lies, then it will all have been worth it. Because in the end, that's what life is about. Not accumulating things, but caring for the people you love, protecting them, holding them up, telling them the truth, even when it hurts. And I did that. And I would do it again 1,000 times over. Because my name is Susan Miller, I'm 61 years old, and this was the story I needed to tell. The story of how a crazy old woman saved her daughter. The story of how a key changed a destiny. The story of how the truth always, always finds a way to come to light. And the story of how justice, though it may be delayed, always arrives. Thank you for listening to the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and hit the notification bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a new woman, a new life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change someone's whole day. May you be blessed, and until next time.